then what happens? You will observe that the power you have of a universal mind within your own self, which you discovered by going 2 steps, you take a third step, which of course requires a little intervention from inside. Because all this exercise I'm telling you, one can do it with the force of willpower and one's mind. Everyone can do that. After that, you can't do any more because the very instrument you are using to do all this is the mind, is the universal mind. You reach the universal mind, you can go no further with the mind. Then you need something else. Now that is where the rare chance of discovering the true self within the universal mind comes up. The only power that I have discovered, which can give you an experience beyond the universal mind, is the power of love emanating from inside the mind, pulling you beyond the mind. The power of love that's inside, behind the mind, within the mind, inside, when that pulls you, it takes you to your soul, to the self. How do we have that? How do we experience a love of that kind which is not in your control? Because all things that are in our control are controlled by your mind. You can't control anything that's not controllable by the mind. And here we are talking of love pulling you. Mind has no role in it. How do you get that experience of love pulling you? Now, it would be almost impossible if that was the structure of our human body and that's all we could do. But no, the human body with its soul inside is experiencing love all the time. It's flowing through all the time. It flows into the mind. The mind can think about it. It flows in the experiences we have of love, loving people, loving things. We attach ourselves to things. Therefore, we call them, I love this flower, I love this picture, I love all of you. All this experience we are talking day and night about love is coming from where? It's coming from where it exists. And it does not exist in the mind at all. It does not exist in the sense perceptions. It does not exist in the body. It does not exist in the one that can fly. It does not exist in this body. Where it's coming from? It's coming from the very place where we want to go. It's coming directly from the soul. Thoughts can come from the mind. Understanding can come from the mind. Rationalization can come from the mind. Love cannot come from any other source except the soul. And soul is beyond the mind. Since it's coming from there, we don't recognize it. We use that force that's coming automatically in all of us. If it did not come, we would be dead. We can't be surviving here if love was not in all of us already. That love already inside us is expressing itself in something in this world. It's not pulling us. We are not using that love to go within. We are using it to go outside, more attachments, more loving people, more loving things, more loving experiences outside. The very love that's coming from our source, from the soul, is being applied by us in various ways. It even loses its own real texture, its real beauty. The real beauty of love is something very different from how it's applied here. It's being applied by working through the mind, not away from the mind. When you apply love through the mind, what happens? The mind uses it through its face, that facing is outside, and that face is called ego, I-ness. This I, me. When you say I, what does it mean? It means I'm not you. I'm separate. The separation that the mind creates, and that separation is what we call the I. If there was no separation, there would be no I. The I is being used by the mind to create a separation from everything. From the world, from the people, from the things that we are trying to love. Love, on the other hand, is trying to pull you away from that separation. And we are using the same love to separate, because we are pumping it through the I, the mind. Now, can we do something to separate it from the mind? Sorry, you can't. Because all attempts you make to do anything in the world is done by the mind. Attempt, effort, trying These words only apply to the mind. And since we can't do anything more than that, we say we want to redirect our love to pull us within beyond the mind, and we're using the mind again to do that won't work. It has to be a love that is coming from inside us, from beyond the mind, and activated so that it is not used by the I. That the I ego of the human mind is not going to use it or apply it. Here comes the role of another human being who is different from the others. The difference from the others is that the others, when you love them, they draw you to themselves. He is a human being who comes into your life and draws you within yourself. He bypasses the process of the mind. As a human being, ordinary human being, he bypasses the process of the mind and operates from within you, operates from beyond your own mind. But we can't see it because he is separate. The I, the ego, is already making that person separate. He is an ordinary human being, has to be, just like us. Because we in this world have a true feeling of experience where I get suppressed only with a human being. When you say, I love my house, the I is very strong. I love my children, I is very strong. Little less than a house. Why? Because the children can make you forget the I. You can be so absorbed in the children, you forget the I. House, you can't forget it. The house doesn't do the same thing a child does. What's the difference? Child is human, like yourself. When we say, I love my new car that's come, the I is very strong. When you say, I met a person and I fell in love immediately, then the I is very weak. Because the person is a human being. If you examine this really, you will find that if you want to experience a love without I, it has to be with a human being. And a human being who has the capacity to bypass the mind in your head, not his head. It should be in your head, otherwise no use. A human being that pulls you to himself or herself is not helping you to get pulled inside yourself. But if there is a human being who, when he appears in our life, can operate from within yourself. Now, how can one operate from within another person? That can only happen thanks to the teachings of Baba Fakir Chand. That can only happen if his awareness, his consciousness is of that one which is the same one in you and that person. And that's the definition of a perfect living master. A perfect living master does not come here to create any change here, to create religions, to create spiritual traditions, to create spiritual societies. Does not come here for any stuff outside at all. A perfect living master comes to operate from the one I, the single self that's in you and the perfect living master at the same time. That's why Baba Fakir Chand was right. That when you say, I see that person outside, I also see inside in meditation, it's because that person is operating in awareness from the single self. If that were not so, this wouldn't happen.